welcome back to this week's Defender Resolves First podcast. Today we have a very special episode, the first of many segments. This is going to be the Unmatched Book Club. With us today, as always, is my wonderful co-host, John. John, how are we doing today?
We are living the dream, Mike.
Yes, that we are. Now you might be asking, what is the Unmatched Book Club? So maybe, John, why don't you give us some insight about what that is?
All right, happy to do so. So the Unmatched Book Club is going to be special segments that we run periodically throughout the podcast's tenure, where we get some really cool special guests on the podcast. We read the book that inspired a deck, and we discuss the book in question. And specifically, we're going to talk about how well was the tale adapted into the deck in question.
Yes, we know that they do pretty good thematic-wise with a lot of these things. Some are taken from media such as TV shows, as the Buffy set, and Jurassic Park from the movie more so than the book. But there is a great book by Michael Crichton about that. To note, I am not the most avid reader of the group of people who join the Discord, so a lot of the times I will not be joining most of the content here. But with us today, we have great friends. We have Baked Goods. Baked Goods, how are we doing today?
I am doing absolutely fantastic, Mike. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. So why don't we start off with, what is your Unmatched origin story? We always ask this. How did you get into Unmatched?
So I think my story will be similar to a lot of other people's, but basically the pandemic of 2020 that I don't think anyone listening has forgotten about yet was in full swing, and the Shut Up and Sit Down, that's a popular board game review YouTube channel, they posted their review of Unmatched, and I was watching it, and I was like, hey, this game looks pretty neat. And then they mentioned that you could play as the raptors from Jurassic Park. And just after hearing that sentence, I went to Amazon and put Unmatched Battle of Legends Volume 1 in my cart and hit order before the video was even finished. So I have to thank another YouTube channel for getting me into Unmatched, and I love it. It's my favorite board game of all time.
Yeah, I think that's very good, and it's always great to hear how many people started with right around the time the Raptors were coming out. I think that that's very influential on how many people join the game. Also with us today, we're going to have Dreamcarver. Dreamcarver, how are you doing this fine day?
Hello, I'm doing good. Yep, I'm here.
Yeah, no, hey, we love to have you. I mean, just here works for everybody. So what is your Unmatched origin story? How did you get into the game?
So, this is I think it was before the pandemic. I don't know. Time's very hazy now. Me and my family and our family friends go out to a cabin every couple of years, and they're really into board games, and our family's into board games too, but they're very into board games. They bring in 6 new ones every time. And the most recent time, the one that totally stuck out to me more than any other was Unmatched. I think they had Volume 1 and Bruce Lee. And I'm also a big fan of Dungeons and Dragons, so I saw that Alice has a Vorpal sword, and I think that's very cool. That's kind of how it started, and I think I also got Coblin Fog. Just played with those for a bit, and then eventually kind of just walked away from it. I think I did join the Discord server, which wasn't active at all. Then later I came back. I'm like, I wonder if there's anything new out. And there was something new out. There was Beowulf and Little Red. And so then I got those very quickly. And then from there I became a lot more active with the community. That kind of sucked me back into it and has not let go since.
Yeah. The community seems to be a wonderful thing. Interesting point that you bring up Beowulf and Little Red, because our first Unmatched Book Club today is Beowulf. John, I'm going to let you take it from here. This is going to be a wonderful rest of the podcast for all you three this evening. And we love to hear how the epic poem comes to fruition.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so we're doing Beowulf, and I want to thank Baked Goods and Dreamcarver for joining me. This started, well, the reason we're doing Beowulf, let's say, is I asked Mike, I said, Mike, do you know if Baked Goods likes reading? And Mike was like, yeah, I think he does. So I just messaged Bake on Discord, hey, do you like books? Baked was like, sometimes. And so I pitched him the idea for doing an Unmatched Book Club podcast. And he says to me, well, actually, I'm reading Beowulf right now. So Beowulf it was decided. So thanks, Baked.
Oh yeah, always a pleasure to help out.
And then we were kind of talking about what we were going to do in the Discord, and Snuggles tags Dreamcarver, and he's like, "Hey, Dreamcarver knows a lot about Beowulf. I bet he'd like to be on." And boom, now Dreamcarver's here. And it turns out, Dreamcarver, you're something of our Discord's expert on Beowulf, huh?
Oof, that's a statement. I don't know if I quite agree with that statement. Maybe though, but I don't seem like a master of Beowulf. But I have taken a class on Beowulf recently. Like it was like a seminar, really short, but it was fun.
Yeah, well, that makes you the expert on this podcast, at least.
Okay, I think I can handle that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank goodness that he at least is joining us, because if it was just you and me, John, I think it would be a lot less good.
I think if it was just us, Baked, it would just be both of us going, so what did you think about?
Yes.
Yeah, I concur. So, but luckily we have Mr. Carver here to help. And I actually would love, if you could, Mr. Carver, if you just kind of want to give a general overview of Beowulf as epic poem, and maybe just a tiny bit of history or fun facts about it from your seminar.
Sounds good. So Beowulf as like a story, it's like an epic poem. You know, I think that's literally the name of one of his cards. I think we've all figured that part out. And it's largely the three interesting parts of the poem. How about that? Are these three combats that Beowulf is involved in. There's a lot of fluff on the edges in between about like the Geats and their neighbors, and you know, that king was a good king, that king was a bad king. They're both dead right now though. And, you know, that kind of thing. But in these three combats, kind of a lot of the plot revolves around Beowulf sort of handling everything himself. Beowulf is way better than anybody else in the story, like very clearly. He solos Grendel, he solos Grendel's mother, and then later when he fights a dragon, the only person who sticks around to help him is Wiglaf, which is like his kinsman. I don't remember exactly how he's related to him, but he's related somehow.
All right. Yeah. So what I kind of want to talk about what translations did we all read, because this is so old.
No.
This story is this story is so old that I am genuinely curious, like how the different things that we read impacted our, understanding of the poem. So I'll go first and say that I read a very modern translation from just a few years ago by Maria Devana Headley, which uses a lot of fun modern text. For instance, the poem begins, "Bro, tell me we still know how to speak of kings." And just like flipping to a random page, I get stuff like, I mean, personally, I've never seen anything like it. So many sliding down the table, etc., etc. No fighting, no fury. Nope, bro. This was a certain type of night. So I definitely had some fun flavor in catching the story.
That's the version we read for my class.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, excellent.
Wow, it was a hoot for us all to just mock it so much. The class's favorite line was #blessed shows up in this translation. Yeah. Like, what is going on?
It sure
so
does.
Funny.
Baked, I understand you read something a little more scholarly.
So I'm realizing now that I got the short end of the stick from this podcast, because I read just a very traditional, straightforward translation. I read Beowulf, a new verse translation by Seamus Heaney. With a name like that, I guess he's qualified to translate this. And it's the bilingual edition. So on one half of the page, there's just gibberish to me, and on the other half there's an English translation, and they did not say bro once, which, I'm a little peeved about now, but I
think you're missing out.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know about that.
I thought it was cool. It's interesting. So it's great to get your perspective on this, Dreamcarver, because when I read this for fun, I was like, wow, this would be such a great way to teach Beowulf in class. And you read this in class, and you're like, nah, bro, this was not it.
No. So, man, I like the idea of making Beowulf, like, having the language be digestible to modern audiences without like the these and thous and all the fanciness. But it like was just too far into slang. And I think that's the main issue is use too much slang. Like you used hashtag blessed. We don't say that anymore, right? Maybe
Right.
we did back
Who's
then.
this we?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe you and you alone. I don't know. But
Hashtag disrespectful.
Dreamcarver is massively aging baked goods and I right now.
No, but like this version was in 2020, right? At least that's when I'm looking at the book right now because I have it on me.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's what it's saying, and in 2 years, slang changes, right? So it's like, it's just, I don't know. It's like in 5 years, this book's gonna be even more obsolete. I don't know. I just feel like I like the idea of using more modern language, but slang specifically is not the direction that I thought was best.
Devil's advocate. As somebody who apparently says hashtag blessed and that's not cool anymore. I like the slang because it dates it. Like there's something to having a timestamp on this, right? This is a poem that has so many timestamps, so I kind of like having a new timestamp on it. Like I hear what you're saying, like it's already dated to a younger audience, but like in 5 years, I don't know, in like 100 years now, it's a new relic to be studied. People are going to be reading this in the same way we look at thou and the. So I get it not working, but I kind of like the idea that it has that baked in. I like dating itself kind of thing.
It was what in John?
I heard that.
What?
You sneaked my name in there. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Oh no. It was not intentional. I don't know. Get a real name, baked goods. What do you want from me?
I have one. It's Taylor, but
oh my god,
my superhero name is a lot more catchy. So
it is. I just always associate you with the cow. So, like seeing you visually, listeners, you're missing out on a treat right now. This guy, what a blessing! Look at that smile.
Hashtag blessed.
That's gonna become a refrain. I can feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel it. What? Okay. Did you guys like the poem? I guess we should start there, right? Did you like what we read?
I'd say yeah, I liked it. I'm a little jealous that the version I read was a lot less spicy than what you guys read, or maybe not spicy, just a little bit more bland.
I mean, you definitely missed out on Beowulf saying YOLO, so that's something.
Yep.
Wait, that perfectly characterizes him, though. Like, you can't complain about that.
I mean, you can, clearly. Dreamcarver is doing it. Well, I have to assume you liked it, Dreamcarver. I mean, because yeah, like you came on the podcast. You're like, wait, yeah, Beowulf is cool. So tell me about that.
I don't know how long I've even known that Beowulf existed. I think my oldest memory of it would be like reading a really small excerpt from like some anthology book in elementary school. But it's just like a thing I've known has existed. But it's one of those things that's like people don't talk about Beowulf like they talk about King Arthur. Like,
right.
So he still feels a little more like, ooh, there's this thing that I don't know that much about. And so seeing him on Unmatched was cool. I'm like, oh, I've heard of that character. And like, oh, there's a class I can take on him. Okay, I'll do that. And so I think Beowulf is very cool. I like the story a lot. Even if the translation we were given was not my favorite, it was probably the best translation for us to talk about because it added a lot of extra depth to discussion. So like, I'm very glad this version exists. It's really fun to talk about, and it is pretty great that hashtag blessed is somehow in there. But
Yeah, well, then you get to have the metatextual discussion too, which I think is a big part, and will definitely come up when we talk about the deck later, with one card in particular. So,
Mhm.
Dreamcarver, do you think just overall, and we can get into the nitty gritty, but overall, do you think that Restoration Games was successful in adapting this poem into a deck? Now, I'm not asking, to be clear, if you think the deck is cool or the deck is fun or dynamic, because I think it is all of those things. But do you think that it is a good representation of the poem?
So one thing we did in our class, we looked at lots of adaptations, and my favorite adaptation is probably the deck, actually. Like, out of all the things we went through in that course, like, some of it's terrible first off, so it's not that much to compete with, but still, I really like how the deck has all the different references in it, and I don't know, just like the feel of the deck and the presentation to me, I think matches very well. So I like I like its representation a lot.
It's funny you mentioned terrible adaptations, because when I first read this, I went and I got really into it, I liked the story. I said, I gotta see this visually, and there is just nothing like of quality to view for this story.
Not at all. We saw two different movies, one show, two shows. Oh no, three movies. And a show, a couple comics, and like I don't know. It's just really fascinating because I feel like Beowulf's the kind of thing that has maybe not as much to go on as King Arthur does, but almost. And it's very much the same kind of vein. But for some reason, like I feel like King Arthur gets a lot better representation and everything compared, and Robin Hood too, than Beowulf. Beowulf just really got the short end of the stick there. It's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about. Baked goods. What are what are your thoughts overall?
So in the book, Beowulf does 98% of all the killing, and Wiglaf does 2%. And that's generally how my Beowulf games go. So I'll say they nailed that aspect of the deck too.
Oh, we're off.
Wiglaf. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's talk about Wiglaf. Let's get into it. Do you guys like that Beowulf has a sidekick to begin with? Because I think there's an interpretation of the deck where you go without one. And B, if you're gonna have a sidekick, do you like that it's Wiglaf?
I'll go. Okay.
Okay.
So Wiglaf is such a character. And the way he works in Unmatched is just really interesting. I really like the deck as a whole. I like playing Beowulf. I always pick on Wiglaf though. I feel like Wiglaf is just not. He's just so like almost not valuable, and it's really funny compared to some other decks. Like in the same set, you got Huntsman, who's like the best sidekick in the game, and then there's Wiglaf, who's like kind of the opposite. Despite that, I think if Beowulf had to have a sidekick, it had to be Wiglaf, and I think he should have had a sidekick. I think that's the move. I think he definitely could have gone away with being a solo, but I don't know. Sidekicks add a, stuff to the game, and in the case of Beowulf, I think it just helps his playstyle a lot. Of yeah, I guess we can. I'll bring that bit up. I like characters like Alice and Achilles who are like big, strong, hit hard, and you think Beowulf's gonna play like that, but he kind of doesn't. I think that's actually kind of cool. He plays in a different kind of warrior type, and I think Wiglaf really helps him play through that way.
Interesting. What do you think, Baked?
Yeah, I agree with most of what Carver just said, because I think if we're looking at all the solo heroes in the game right now that don't have sidekicks, they all like pretty much couldn't have a sidekick. Like Jekyll and Hyde, Invisible Man, Bruce, Mary. I don't really see those characters having sidekicks, whereas Beowulf, because Wiglaf exists, I think works with having a sidekick. I think definitely an argument could be made for him being solo. He basically is solo kind of already, but I think he's better with Wiglaf at his side, especially because just it's 9 extra health, if nothing but that.
Yeah, it's a 9-point meat shield.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting thing you bring up Invisible Man, because at one point in development, Invisible Man did have a sidekick. Some fun information for you. If we ever do an Invisible Man Unmatched Book Club, I'm sure we'll bring it up and talk about it. But the character that he's based off of is like kind of a non-entity, so they ended up moving away from it. But yeah, in early stages of development, that deck did have a sidekick. I think there's room for a solo interpretation of Beowulf. When I was first reading this, he's got all his kinsmen. He shows up with like a whole clan of dudes. And I was like, why doesn't he just have like 3 or 4 warrior tokens? And then you get through the poem and they don't do anything. They just show up and they're like, yeah, we're here. We're going to drink some beer and then nod off and die. So like Beowulf, so it makes sense after, once you get through it, I was like, okay, I get why his kinsmen and his like warrior clan are not here. I don't know. I'm torn on Wiglaf because I was reading and Baked and we chatted. I think you had a similar experience. You're reading and you're reading and you're reading and you're through the majority of the poem and you're like, did I miss him? Did I miss the appearance of Wiglaf? Like, who is this guy? And then he shows up in the last like 15 pages to just be like, what's up, King?
I was so afraid that I was reading like a wrong translation. I was like, wow, is Wiggy just like not in this book? I was like, where is he? And then you guys were like, oh, you just haven't gotten to that part yet. And I was like, oh yeah, because he's only in the last like 20 pages of the novel. So
yeah, he really just shows up like for moral support as he takes on the dragon in the third act.
Mm-hmm.
So the big thing when I think Beowulf, and I've kind of seen this like sentiment echoed elsewhere in a more critical vein. I don't share the like criticisms around this, but when I think of Beowulf, I think of Grendel, and Grendel's not like a playable character, but he is incorporated into the deck through Beowulf's super cool defense card, the Equal of Grendel, where you can spend 2 rage to deal damage to the opposing fighter equal to the printed value of their card. It's a pretty dope card. How do you guys feel about how Grendel's represented here?
Well, that card is arguably one of the best defense cards in the game. And I think it speaks to Beowulf's just tenacity. It's really hard to kill Beowulf because it takes a literal dragon to do so. And in the process of trying to kill him, he is going to put the hurt on you, which the Equal of Grendel, it hurts a lot, especially if you're coming at him with something big. I'm sure Carver will have something a little bit more intelligent to say, but that's just my take on that card.
Sure.
I don't know if I have that much more to say on that one. I mean, the Equal of Grendel is one of my favorite cards in that deck and just in Unmatched in general. And I like that there's like 3 of them, right? That makes like a big part of his character. That it's one of the most commonly showing up cards. The art's cool. The effect is really interesting. And I just think it fits pretty well. I don't know how much of the card's design was based around like the story specifically as much as mechanics, but at least I think it's thematic in that like your opponent has to attack you first, except they're not attacking you first because they take damage first. And that's kind of what happened when Grendel was like terrorizing Harrod Hall. Then he comes in and he's going to attack Beowulf, and then he doesn't because Beowulf is now awake and is now wrestling with him. So at least that part feels pretty thematic. So
yeah, I like the card thematically being a defense card because the scene depicted even in the card art is him ripping off Grendel's arm, which he does barehanded, which is an incredible feat of strength. So I think there's always like when you think of that imagery and you think to translate the deck, the temptation is certainly to make that like a big attack, right? My man's barehandedly ripping arms off of people. But putting it on defense, I think thematically works so much better because it's almost like Beowulf is saying, yeah, hit me with your hardest, scariest, biggest attack. I do not care. I will rip your arm off. So I like the theme of it so much after reading the poem. The other big part of Beowulf's deck that we have to talk about is the rage mechanic. So he can gain up to 3 rage, and then he spends it for certain effects, and he gains rage every time he takes a damage. So how do you guys feel about that in relation to the story? Dreamcarver.
Okay. That that one's always been kind of interesting to me because to me the rage bit feels like it fits Beowulf's like barbarian type fighter archetype as a deck, but like I don't know if his anger is quite that much of a focus in the poem.
Right.
Or at least to me, whatever it seemed that Beowulf was largely driven by more of like a noble sense of thirst for combat. Still, we had lots of debates over if he was even a good guy or not. I'm on Team Beowulf's a good guy, like very strongly. My classmates weren't all, but I think Beowulf's definitely supposed to be a good guy. And so to me, when I think of him, I think if I'm not so like super like angry, like Hulk-like, right? Like Hulk is rage, but
Right.
Beowulf, I mean, I think the rage mechanic works, but that's not quite what I think of when I think of Beowulf. I think more so of like warrior that is driven and you can't put down. And I think the rage helps, even if the anger isn't like part of his identity to me, I think the rage helps with the idea of you attack him and you doesn't mean you're killing him, you're actually helping him now. So that part, I quite like how that worked.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of what you're saying, but I'm going to throw it to baked goods before I really get into it because you and I were talking earlier, baked goods, and you were kind of like, I don't really think of Beowulf as a ragey fellow.
No, to me, he kind of came off very level-headed, just very cool and collected. He knows that he is amazing. He's capable of everything and anything. He can beat anyone in his path, but he never really came off as a angry person, I guess. And I really like the way Carver described it. I would agree with most of what he said as well.
Yeah, I think to me when I read, he comes off as, if anything, the main emotion I get from him is eager, if nothing else. He's like showing up and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill this guy. Give it, like throw him at me. And then then he's got to fight the mother and he's like, oh, she's like at the bottom of the water. I got to go down there and swim. Let's do it. Like he's never like angry. He's just like down. Like he's here for a good time. That's his attitude the whole poem. And then a dragon shows up and he's just kind of like, all right, so we're doing this. Like he's never depicted as an angry barbarian. And so I think the rage mechanic has more to do with like the cultural I don't want to say stigma because there's a negative connotation to that term, but the like cultural correlation maybe between how like what we think of when we think of Vikings and barbarians. Like we think of like big angry rage monsters. I'm sure like Dungeons and Dragons has something to do with that association in our minds. But that to me, that's like where it comes from. It's from like a cultural thought of, oh well, Beowulf is like a Viking, so he's probably like a big ragey barbarian.
Yes, I love that you brought Dungeons and Dragons into this because if Beowulf was a class, he would be a barbarian.
Yeah.
And I have one more question for both of you. In your translation, did Beowulf ever say, "Come at me, bro"?
Actually, I think he might have. To be honest with you, I think.
I think if he did though, it wasn't directed at
the monsters
he fought. I think it was directed more like he's being showy when talking to another person, and he's like, "I'll take on whatever," and then he's saying, "Come at me, bro," like that. But I'd be, it's been a bit. I'd be very
Like,
surprised if he never said that.
okay, so when he's thinking about going out and killing the dragon, right? I'm just gonna read just a little snippet so that you guys can really understand, because Dreamcarver and I have said what this poem is, but you need to know what this poem is. So if you pick up this translation, if you happen to be following along for like some coincidental reason, it's on page 108, and Beowulf blasted his last boast. I laid my life down on the daily when I was your age. Now, Grey Guardian though I am, I'll show you how it's done. I'll kill this creature if it's the last thing I do. If it's no coward, it'll come out of its cave and face its challenger. I'd go in without weapons, as I always have, if this weren't a dragon. I'd do it like a man, kill it barehanded, like I killed Grendel so long ago. But mortal skin can't contend with a flame-spitting fiend, and so I go in sword-armed, taking shield and mail shirt. I won't surrender when I see the beast, but fight it by the wall, and God will dictate which brawler wins. Get a good seat, boys, and look to the sky. Your job's to watch this flyer fall. I'm decided. Don't defy me. I've no more shade to throw on this serpent raider. Let the winner win. Let the loser get bent. My men, stay here atop the barrow. Wait with your war weapons. Watch and see who wins. Who can suffer more? Who can be worse wounded? Who can survive fire? This is my fight. I don't ask for intervention. None of you are strong enough to take this thing, to try to stake your manhood on doing a dragon. I'll be the one winning the gold. My bravery the broadest. And if not, boys, this'll be the battle that breaks your king. Like, that's him the whole poem, though. He's just, like, super boastful and very matter-of-fact about it. He's just like, what up, boys? This dragon, he's going down. I got this.
Can I just say that was amazing as my first time hearing that. And I wish I read your translation.
That was a good excerpt.
Yeah, it's a good one. I like whenever he talks in the poem. There's a lot of stuff. Like, I get what Dreamcarver is saying, like hashtag blessed and like YOLO and stuff like that. There are instances where you're kind of like, okay, buddy. But whenever Beowulf talks, I really dig it. He always sounds like a frat boy about to just like mess his night up. Like, I don't know. It's a fun time.
Yes, that sounds like a fun time. And frat bro, I definitely got those vibes off of that excerpt. But I'm not sure if that was just the words you were reading or just you, because you're a cool guy, Tommy. So I could see you playing Beowulf in like a TV show or something.
Oh, definitely that would never happen. Never in a million. I'm not cool enough for Beowulf. I'm also like the most physically weak human being to have ever lived. So the Beowulf role doesn't suit me, I don't think. I would be Wiglaf. I would show up at the very end. I would be like, what's up, my bro who has slain all things? I'm here. What? Yeah, no, I'm just here. Am I doing anything? No, bro. I'm just here. That would be my role in a Beowulf production.
That was perfect, though. So if there's ever, they want to do Beowulf correctly for once in a movie, they need to find you.
Listen, I'll come in, I'll show up, I'll do nothing, and then history will memorialize me as a sidekick in a deck with 9 tinky health, bro. That's it. It sounds great.
But you also get Hot for Battle, the best card that I definitely don't dislike. Hot for Battle at all. I definitely really like that card, and there's nothing wrong with it.
So I'm sensing, Dreamcarver, that perhaps you have some feelings about the Wiglaf specific card, Hot for Battle, which is a 3-value attack, which states, after combat, Wiglaf may swap spaces with Beowulf. It's got a hefty 3 boost. I can't imagine, Dreamcarver, that what you're saying right now is that you never use this card. Instead, you only ever use its 3 boost value. That can't be right, can it?
Oh my. See, I really like the Beowulf deck, so I want all his stuff to be good. But like that used to be my least favorite card, like hands down in Unmatched. Like not because it's actually like doesn't fit the deck, because as a 3 boost he needs it. Like it's like your obvious throwaway into Heirloom, but just like it feels so bad because like usually all you're doing is you're maneuvering and then throwing Beowulf next to the opponent, and now it's your opponent's turn. And
Yeah.
it's just like, I don't know. It's just not it. It's just not it. It's not the card.
There is something thematic about Wiglaf going to make a big attack and then being like, actually, just kidding. It's Beowulf who's doing it. I'm doing nothing.
I think that just adds to the bad rap we all give Wiglaf. Like,
Yeah.
is this one card that he can attack with brings the hero in to beat. Like,
It definitely fits at least the narrative of the poem. Baked goods. I see you smiling over there. What are your thoughts on this card? I feel like you have an opinion.
Well, I don't think I've ever once used it as an attack. But I will say Wiglaf's other card, Remnant of Valor, I believe, the Scheme.
Yes,
I
the
love
Scheme.
that card. Spin to win, as some might call
I
it.
do like that card.
Yeah. So for those listening who don't remember, don't have the deck in front of them, Remnant of Valor is a Wiglaf-specific scheme. Wiglaf deals 1 damage to each adjacent fighter. If Beowulf was dealt damage this way, gain 1 action. So spin to win, as Baked Goods calls it.
Yeah, really good source of AoE damage or area of effect that can hit multiple things around you. And it can even give Beowulf rage because you can damage Beowulf with it. And I find myself, why would you attack with Hot for Battle when you could play Spin to Win and deal some damage?
It's funny to picture the Wiglaf of the poem running in, dragon before him, Beowulf next to him, and just swinging and being so bad at it that he hits King Beowulf. Yeah, there's something fun about that. I don't know. His other big card that we're moving on. We're not talking about Wiglaf anymore. We're moving to Beowulf, and I think the big one, since we've already talked about the Equal of Grendel, which is to me his best card in his deck because the fear of Grendel, the threat of it is almost greater than the card itself. But his other one is the Ancient Heirloom, which is a 3-value attack specific to Beowulf. The card's effects can't be canceled, and it reads, during combat, you may spend 2 rage to make this card's value 5 instead. You may spend 1 rage to boost this card, and you may do both. So this is it. This is the big premier attack. How are you guys feeling about the Ancient Heirloom? I'm going to toss it to Baked Goods first because I keep tossing a Dreamcarver first. And Baked gets to just ride those coattails.
Well, so this is perfect because I'll give you my interpretation of this card, and then Carver can be like,
brilliant.
Yes, that's right, or I'm not so sure about that. So
I'm sure you've got it.
I believe this card, Ancient Heirloom, in the book when Beowulf is fighting Grendel's mother in the second act, he was doing it in a big lake underwater. He and this mother are just going at it at the bottom of a lake, and his sword isn't working. It's not dealing any blows to Grendel's mother, and he spots this ancient heirloom in the bottom of the lake, and he pulls it out and just yeets Grendel's mother into oblivion. So I think this card is perfectly represented in the game because Ancient Heirloom oftentimes is an 8-value attack thanks to Hot for Battle, for instance. And you can just dump 3 rage and a big boost value card into it, and most characters will have trouble blocking an 8-value attack. And so I think the card is very fitting. Now Carver can probably come in and say that didn't happen.
No, I think that's it. I think I've wondered about that for a bit, which sword is it referring to? Because there's a couple swords in the poem, and they usually all suck. Actually, there's no real good sword. Even the good sword that I think Ancient Heirloom is supposed to be the sword from Grendel's mother's hoard. melts or breaks, or it stops working after it kills her. So like none of those swords are actually any good. But I think that's the closest one to being a good sword, and I think that's what Ancient Heirloom's referring to. It might also be referring to like being both the sword he killed Grendel's mother with and the sword he used against the dragon, but that one didn't work very well either. So I think it's probably just the one with Grendel's mother.
Yeah, it's a great card. Like you mentioned, you can get it up to 8, and anytime I get this card up to 8, I am feeling #blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the interpretation of it being the sword, from the water, especially because the idea that like the card can't be canceled, so you get like one really big hit, which I think thematically fits like kind of what happened down there in the water. Beowulf has some schemes. He's got Vigor and Courage, and he's got the Golden Drinking Horn. Dreamcarver, which of these do you want to talk about first?
I guess we should probably talk about the Golden Drinking Horn since we're talking about objects from the poem right now.
That was such an intelligent segue.
Oh, my thoughts on the Golden Drinking Horn are limited though.
Oh well, okay. Let's hear them. Well, let's hear them.
That was in the poem. I'm just trying to remember that one. I just remember that one being that important of a thing.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely hear you.
Is it
Like when I was
he gets, I think he
when
gets
I
it
was
as a reward.
like so the card lets you spend any amount of rage, and then you choose a different effect for each rage spent. So you can draw 2 cards, you can move Beowulf up to 4 spaces, and you can recover 2 health for Beowulf. So it's like a super important card. He gets to do all sorts of stuff, right? He can heal, he can move, and he can like reload, essentially recovering. He can draw the 2 cards. This one is the one in the deck that strikes me as most of a stretch from the poem. Baked, does your translation offer any special significance to this thing?
No. I was looking for it. Whenever I would read, I would have the notes app open on my phone, and I would write down all the like page numbers where certain cards were referenced, or I guess where the cards were, or like the source material for the cards, I should say. And
Yeah.
I was looking for any reference of a golden horn to drink out of, and I did not find one. So I was like, oh, okay, that might have been Restoration Games, just a little bit of embellishment, but the card I think works in Beowulf's deck, and the art looks cool. So I can't complain about it in that sense.
I think this is an example of game mechanics winning over theme, like, right? Because Beowulf needs this card, I think. He needs to heal 4 times in a game, and he probably needs to reload his hand. And there's definitely going to be points in the game because of his limited defense values where he's going to have to move 4 spaces to get away, or maybe at the end he needs to get closer to cinch the deal. So mechanically, they want to have the card. So I think that's just where it comes from. It's more like the game design than the theme design is my take there. And then his other cool scheme is Vigor and Courage, which Beowulf of the poem has almost too much of, which lets you choose an opponent, they discard a random card, and then you gain rage equal to that card's boost value. What are we thinking about this? I like thematically, I dig it. How about you guys?
I love that card thematically. One thing I like about Unmatched a lot is a lot of the cards are like abstractions. They're not like, oh, this is this specific attack. I mean, that's the case for like Bruce Lee, right? He's got his Jeet Kune Do forms, but in general, a lot of cards are more just like, it's an attack. What's it really look like? Here's kind of a gist, but mostly it's just an abstraction of the combat. And to me, I really like Vigor and Courage because I see it as like he's scaring the crap out of you. Like he's just staring at you, and your knees are shaking, and you lost a random card. Like you can't really handle the fact that this dude does not care that he's holding 1 defense in his hand because he's got 12 in the deck. He's gonna beat you up even if you try and take him down. It won't work. So that's how I see it as a fear effect.
Yeah,
I would agree completely with that. He has the courage, and you don't.
Yeah, he's coming in, and it's just like from that excerpt I read you. He's like, listen, man, I'm gonna do this thing. And like normally, I'm not even gonna use a weapon. And so, the people on the other end of the battlefield is like, this guy's coming at me with no freaking sword, man. So yeah, I like it on that level for sure. One of the most interesting things that he can do mechanically is the no contest expecteth, which is an attack, a 3-value attack where after combat, if he attacked a sidekick and he won, then he gets to spend 3 rage and absolutely just defeat the whole sidekick, which is like super great for stomping multi-health sidekicks. How do you feel about this one? What are we thinking thematically?
So thematically, it works because especially an opponent's sidekick. The sidekick is usually a little bit weaker than the hero. And so Beowulf's just looking at this pathetic excuse of a fighter and going, you're not the hero. You're not putting up a fight. So I am just going to step on you and stomp you into the ground. It just works completely. He's literally not expecting a contest from the other fighter.
Mhm.
I think... So thematically it works. Mechanically, I don't think this card works just because at a 3-value attack, you often won't win a combat if
Mhm.
if the opponent blocks for their sidekick, because there aren't a lot of 2-value blocks in the game that aren't feint. And if your opponent is blocking with like a regroup or nothing at all against Beowulf, who has 3 rage, that's usually a big mistake on their part. So I think if your opponent is actively trying to play around this card, they can all day, and Beowulf usually gets some contests, unfortunately.
It's a highly telegraphed attack
Yes,
because you have to have
exactly.
the 3 rage and you have to be attacking a sidekick.
It seems pretty specific to the set to me. It only works on Huntsman, which, to be fair, is the character you need it to work on because he's got 9 health and is the best sidekick in the game. But everyone else can block with things better than 2. And even Huntsman has his what is it? Stones in the belly, which will increase his value. But if he doesn't have knives in the basket and you've got 3 rage, Huntsman is dead. there's no way around it. Whereas
Right, you
any other
can't stop
sidekick,
it.
yeah, like I feel like at 4 would be too good. So I'm not like, oh, that card is bad or should be different. It's just it's not gonna come up very much. It
Yes,
can
I
if you
completely
like,
agree.
yeah.
It shouldn't be a 4. I want to stress
Right,
that.
yeah. Yeah. I think maybe not 3 rage though. I feel like maybe 3 is kind of a lot there. Just because then it's like only in one specific scenario you're ever gonna use it, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm like it, it's really just Beowulf's version of Hot for Battle. It's the cards you chuck into Heirloom. It's just because it's actually a little bit better because it's Beowulf. So it actually has a little bit more utility than Hot for Battle, but it's still kind of the same deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that it's designed for the set that it's in. It's meant for Huntsman. It's a card designed to kill a 9-value character but by doing only 1 damage. So
I would like to correct Carver on something because he said that the
Yes.
Huntsman was the best sidekick in the game. And
Oh,
the
he always
Porter
forget. The
exists,
Porter.
so that statement is just false.
Sorry, second best. I just can't believe I forgot the Porter. Yeah, I think it's whenever someone plays Sinbad against me and I get destroyed by the Porter by commanding impact and multiple momentous shifts, like I repress the memory, so I just always forget he exists.
The
But yeah,
Porter is both the best and the worst sidekick in the game. No in
Right.
betweens.
I was just going to say, I'm not in this meta. I didn't realize there was a discussion of the Porter even being the best. What is going on right now?
I mean, he can move 9 spaces and draw a bunch of cards. What other sidekick can do that?
Okay. All right. So Baked has come onto the podcast now to be silly, is what we're all. In other words, your complete modus operandi. Nobody expected anything else.
You know what? Let's play a game after this, Carver. You be Little Red and I'll be Sinbad, and we'll see whose sidekick survives.
sounds good. Okay.
As Beowulf would say, 1v1 me, bro. Let's do this.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh God! Listen, I don't know, man. whenever I have the huntsman, and he gets off some healing, that's hashtag blessed. That's a hashtag blessed moment. So we have two more cards I really want to get into, and the first is the War King, which is a 1 value versatile, and you can spend any amount of rage. For each rage you spend, you get +2. So you can use this on defense, which I find myself doing most often. I don't know about you guys, or you can use this on attack. So what do you think?
So for those of you who weren't aware, in between the second and third acts of this book, so after he kills Grendel's mother and before he kills the dragon, Beowulf is king for like 50 years. And it's kind of funny. My book kind of just glosses over it. It's like he kills Grendel's mother. There's a little bit of fallout from that. And then the book goes, and then Beowulf ruled for 50 winters. And it's just like, oh, okay. So he was just king. The interesting thing to note that, though, is in that time, in his 50 years of ruling, his kingdom was not attacked once by enemy forces because the rest of the world knew about this Beowulf guy, and they were like, yo, we are not going to mess with him at all. And so I think the War King is just a great title for him to have because he is the king and he's also the king of war. So he is the War King. And having a card that, yes, its printed value is 1, but you can pump it with rage and get it to a 7, which is just insane on attack or defense. I just think it's a really, really fitting card.
Yeah, anything to add, Dreamcarver?
Next to nothing to add. I think that's great.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it's great. I think it's just like one of those cards that I personally always use on defense because Beowulf doesn't have very many defenses. But it's like you wish you could use an attack more because a 7's ridiculous. So, but a 7's is also nuts. Like that's just crazy. Well, that stops an Ox form without boosting. But what I like about it for him on defense is you can use rage so that you block most of the damage, but like try and just take 1 and you get one of those back. Like it just, you feel so smart doing that. You feel like, oh, I'm so clever.
Yeah, I love getting hit with like a 4 into War King because I spend the rage, take 1 damage, and get my rage back. Yeah, it's. I hesitate to say it, but in those moments, I do feel hashtag blessed.
And I would like to correct Dreamcarver again. If yeah, I'm just coming at you today. If you're playing Beowulf versus Sun Wukong, and Sun Wukong plays an Ox form and you block with your War King, it would be a mistake to spend all 3 rage, making it a 7, when you could spend 1 rage to make it a 3, and then play Hot for Battle as a boost, and then make it a 6,
I totally agree.
and get your rage back.
Oh no, yeah, it's the move. No, I think I don't know if you guys have I've been trying to figure out how to make Beowulf beat Wukong, and it is so hard. But I think he kind of can do it, like if the stars align, and that's part of it for sure. Is that War King lets him do something about War King and Hot for Battle. He can do something about Ox form, which is more than most people can say.
Yeah. Cool. The last cool card, and Baked Goods, you can issue a correction on me if I'm wrong about this. But since you got that hammer hot and ready, I think this is the only example in the game of a card that is metatextual, meaning that it's talking more about like the story structure than it is the character. It's called Epic Poem. It's a 2 attack. Immediately you gain 1 rage, and then during combat the card's value is +1 for each rage you have, and you don't spend the rage. So it's a pretty good card. And then the picture is of the cover, basically of the poem. So it's really interesting, from that point of view. That it's less about him, and it's more about the everlasting endurance of this tale.
Yes, I would. That's spot on. And even in the card art, Beowulf is like killing the dragon, like he's digging his sword into him, which is just really cool. Yeah, Carver, you have anything to add?
I don't think so. Not on this one. This is it's a cool card, and I think what I like that it references its source material in a way that a lot of other things don't. Like we don't have like, the Cobble and Fog decks don't have like Gothic novel, right, as one of their cards. And that would be so goofy. But for some reason it works for Beowulf. Like because I think his medium is a little more unique than most and Unmatched. And I think like when I think of epic poem, I think of Beowulf. Like I think Beowulf is the epic poem, and so he can have a card called epic poem if he wants.
Oh, you know what's cool? Little Red has a card called A Grim Tale. That's also kind of the same like vein of title.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's what the card's called. Because it's always just like, ooh, the big heal card.
Yeah.
No, it has a name. It has a name.
The set, like aesthetically, is the most obsessed with the physical source material. You know what I mean? Like representing the works of literature themselves. You see it in the dials. You see it on the card backs and everything. Like the card back says the epic poem of Beowulf and Wiglaf, for example. And yeah, as a whole, like that whole set like really leans into the literary vibe of both the characters, which is super unique.
It's my personal favorite set. That one's my favorite. So.
Thoughts were shared. Baked, what's your personal favorite set?
I think Little Red v Bayo is probably the best 2-pack in the game. As in, like,
I would agree.
Set with 2 heroes. Ooh, I think my favorite set, though, will probably be Houdini versus the Genie when that comes out. That set is just bonkers. It's both of those characters are really, really cool, but we'll see.
Man, spoilers. This guy. Cobble and Fog is my favorite. I like what
that's my
one
favorite
does
for.
a lot.
That's my favorite for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it has that same similar cohesive aesthetic style, and it leans into like the literary aspect of it in a very different way. Like I just really like how all the art is like black and white grayscale, but then you have like that touch of color for each one. I just visually that whole thing really rocks my boat.
I just remembered the Gothic novel joke. That was good.
It.
That was so good.
Dracula attacks you with a 3-value card. Gothic novel.
That was so good.
I wish you guys could see Baked Good's face right now. He is collapsing.
This happened in my one of my most recent tournament matches where I just started laughing and I couldn't stop.
Gothic novel.
Gothic novel. #blessed. Let's do this.
All right, listeners, now you know if you ever really want to have an advantage over Baked Goods, maybe in some tournament play, just mid-game shout, Gothic novel, #blessed, and it's game over for Baked. He's going down. The mind games will distract him.
Yeah, I'm done for if that ever happens.
Speaking of tournament, have you guys had any luck recently? It doesn't have to be in the tournament, but it can be elsewhere with Beowulf, Baked Goods. You're like fist pumping.
Yes. Well, okay. So my classic Beowulf story is in the Summer of Legends 2021 semifinals on stream versus Josh Tan. I busted out my boy Beowulf to do something. It was a questionable pick, and Josh was playing Robin Hood in game 1, and I was doing relatively well, and then there was just one turn where Robin Hood attacked with 2 regroups, and I blocked with a Grendel and a War King, and just that turn lost me the game. It was bad, but I'm turning that around now because in Winter of Champions 2022, in my round 4 match versus Jacqueline, I picked Beowulf to counter his Dracula, but I ended up getting Beowulf versus his Yananga and actually won that game somehow. So, I don't think Beowulf really does that well against the bonus attacks in Volume 2, just because of his limited number of defenses. But he has some tricks like Equal of Grendel and Spin to Win. That was really helpful for me versus Yananga's archers. So,
well, I was going to say that's a massive uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
So do you pull that off with Spin to Win?
It was a combination of me getting lucky and my opponent getting super unlucky. He did not revive a single archer, I think, so he took a lot
Oh,
of damage as Yanenga. And of course, Vigor and Courage, the random discard scheme. Yanenga's boost values are so high. So basically, anytime I used that, unless I hit one of his archer cards, I was basically guaranteed 2 or 3 rage, which is just very, very helpful.
yeah, you love to see it. How about you, Dreamcarver? Any recent experience playing Beowulf?
Um, I considered him like my secondary main for a while because I really liked him, and then I realized I'm not good at him, and so I kind of stopped. And I've picked him back up more recently. Mostly, I'm just doing like theory crafting against Wukong because I think if he exhausts him, he can win. If things go well. Like, and by well I mean he has to predict every Ryuju, the bonus attack, whatever it's called. Like, and that's really hard to predict.
Yeah,
But if he does it, he's doing well.
you need what Gary likes to throw around, Yomi. You gotta have that. You gotta have that Yomi.
Yeah, I really like Beowulf as an exhaustion character because I think it's super thematic. Like, that is
Mm-hmm.
what Beowulf is, right? I said earlier, like, I like the characters who hit hard, and Beowulf feels like, oh, he'd be that character, like the +2 attack, but he's actually not. Instead, he's just the character you can't take out. And I think for him, when you remember like some of his more goofy feats, like, oh yeah, of course he should be like amazing in the exhaustion game. He swam for multiple hours downwards to go fight Grendel's mother. Like, he held his breath for multiple hours. What?
Yeah, and then fought her underwater.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then he before then he like raced someone through the ocean for multiple days, and he lost the race because while he was racing he killed some sea monsters. Like, what? Like, I don't know. So yeah, if anyone should be able to win the exhaustion game, it would be him. You can't tire Beowulf out. He's gonna tire you out. So I think
yeah,
that's just a
that's a
really
great
fun
point.
thematic way to play him.
I love that. And then, I mean, that kind of. Oh, baked.
Well,
What
I
were
was
you
just
gonna
going to
say?
say he's going to go to the bitter end and he's going to go down swinging if that's how he goes out. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's saying, "Boys, look at me, watch me. I'm gonna do this." I was gonna say that really leads into just overall. I mean, like some closing thoughts on how we feel restoration games did adapting. So earlier, you said, Dreamcarver, this is your favorite adaptation of the poem, which is really high praise. And you mentioned, and like I really backed that up, that well, there hasn't really been anything good like to point to in terms of adaptations. But I think it's not just that it has little competition; it's also just like thematically a great representation of who this character is supposed to be.
Yeah, if anything, it's a representation of Beowulf and not a representation of what Beowulf looks like in other representations. Like, we are very thankful to not borrow from those. Like, we're very thankful about that one.
Yeah. You mean you didn't love Angelina Jolie as Grendel's mom in a completely fully CGI film?
That movie does have the golden drinking horn in it, though.
A.
So,
Oh.
it's got something.
Wait,
So
Angelina Jolie is Grendel's mother?
yeah, so I don't want to spoil the ending of that film for anybody who's listening, but it is bonkers and it is a dramatically different take than the poem. It's almost baked. It's almost worth watching just so you can text Dreamcarver and I later and be like, what was that? Like, it's almost worth watching for the response. But the third, I mean, if you don't want to watch it, you can Google it, but the third act does something so insane, like in terms of like changing the source material. You got to check it out. I mean, I'm like dissing it, but it's thematically ambitious. I don't think that it pulls off what it's going for, and I think that like the wonky CGI is a problem that it runs into, like that doesn't help sell it. But I get what they're going for. I don't think it executes it very well, but it is ambitious. I'll say that.
Okay, I definitely want to check that out just because that sounds cool. But my other question is, if Angelina Jolie is Grendel's mother, who plays Grendel and who plays Beowulf? if you know off the
Beowulf
top of your head.
is Ray Winstone, I think. Does that sound right, Dreamcarver? Am I getting that right?
I'm not. I know nothing about actors. I'm unfortunately the wrong person to ask.
All right, I'm going to Google it right now so all of our listeners can know. So it's the 2007 film. If you're looking this up later,
Great
directed
year.
by
Great year.
oh yeah, what a year. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, who usually puts out some good hits. The screenplay is actually by Neil Gaiman. I don't know if you guys know who Neil Gaiman is, but he's like a very good writer. He writes good stuff normally. And yes, it is Ray Winstone as Beowulf, and to scroll down, Crispin Glover is Grendel.
Both of those names sound familiar but wrong. Like they sound like other actors' names. If that makes sense.
Ray. I didn't like Ray Winstone as Beowulf, and Crispin Glover as Grendel is like a choice that's so obvious that it renders it like not as good. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'll probably that'll make sense when I watch the movie, I guess.
It's like, I don't know. You just think, oh yeah, Crispin Glover is going to be. I don't know. It like robs it of something. I think just like knowing that is such an obvious decision. And then Brendan Gleeson is Wiglaf, which is actually really funny if you don't know.
Okay, so I just Googled Crispin Glover. It makes total sense.
Yeah, you get what I'm saying now? Yeah.
Yeah, so
okay.
For the people listening, I guess, Crispin Glover is the dad from Back to the Future. The kind of like goofy, weird, lanky looking guy with like a semi-bad haircut who like is like handsome, but at the same time not, you know? It's so... It makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. So that movie, a bust. But this deck, very good.
Love the deck. Fantastic deck.
Dreamcarver, you mentioned, and we didn't talk about it yet, but we have to plug this. So for your Beowulf seminar class that you took, your final assignment, please tell everybody about that.
Our final was to adapt Beowulf in a medium of our choosing. And I, at the time, had just gotten way too deep into making Unmatched fan decks, and so I asked my professor, I'm like, hey, there's this board game with Beowulf in it. For my final, could I, like, make a different character that's not Beowulf in it? And she gave me the okay, and so I made Grendel's mother. That was fun.
Where can folks find that deck?
On Unmatched Maker, you can search. She's not called Grendel's mother. She's called Grendel's motor. So it's like the old English like literal. That's what it says when you look at it. That way it sounds more like a name. So it's Grendles, Grendel's, and it should show up. But motor's MODOR if you want to look that up. But yeah, it's there, and that's one of my decks.
Awesome. Well. We're getting to the point where I'm going to thank you guys for coming on. So I just want to say, Dreamcarver, do you have anything else that you want to plug? Anything else for our listeners that you'd like them to check out?
Nope. I think just if you want to look at that deck, go for it. I also made other decks, but yeah, if you're in this server, I'll see you around, I guess. But that's about it.
Cool. All right, so check out Dreamcarver's fan decks. He puts a lot of time and effort and thought into them. And Baked Goods, you're on YouTube. What's going on there? Tell our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel that is just called Baked Goods. If you search it, you're probably going to get a lot of cooking YouTube channels, a lot of brownies, a lot of cupcakes.
Uh-huh.
So my profile picture is a cow with human teeth who is smiling almost as wide as I do. And I make Unmatched content. I post strategy guides for the specific characters. I have one on Beowulf if you want to go listen to it after this one. I post my tournament games. I just have a good time being a goofball. And that's what's on my YouTube channel, Baked Goods.
Baked Goods, this community is #blessed to have you and your videos off. I see a lot of times people will be like, actually, when I talk to people who are strategizing for the tournament, and this happens more and more and more, they'll be like, yeah, so I just watched Baked Goods video on insert character here. I just watched Baked Goods video on consistency. I just watched, so the community watches for sure. They take notes and they're listening. So we're really appreciative for what you do definitely.
Yeah. Thank you. And before I leave, I would just like to share my favorite quote from Beowulf, if that's all
Please
right.
do. Please do.
So in my translation, this is line 1838. It's short, so don't worry. It is, foreign places yield more to one who is himself worth meeting. Think about that for a minute. Foreign places yield more to one who is himself worth meeting.
In our translation, it says, foreign shores share their secrets with those who are themselves worthy.
Oh, yes. That's a juicy one. That's
deep.
getting tattooed on my lower back at some point in my life.
Oh my goodness, you love to see it, guys. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a real treat.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It was always a pleasure. You love to see it.
You love to see it. Yes. All right. I think we're gonna bring Mike back. Mike, what's going on? How have you been?
Oh, I've been good. I've been around. I've been here. I've been there. It's always good to have some brownies and cookies on our podcast, as well as some wonderful dream catchers. So with that, I'm gonna say that it was a wonderful episode. Um, I think we expect to have much more, including for all sets. I think it's good to start off with a great Beowulf. We obviously heard why we started off with that. Well, I think moving forward, what is our next week's episode going to be about, John?
Well, the next week we're going to be talking about Redemption Row. We're super excited. So Mike and I are going to play quite a few games within this set. Maybe test some characters out against other characters. There's been a lot of talk in the Discord recently about one character from that set in particular. So we'll have some in-depth discussion about Mr. Ghostwriter after doing some tests ourselves. But we're really just going to try the set out, give our initial impressions, some thoughts, maybe some strategic maneuvers, whatever we can find, I suppose, right off the bat. But we're really excited about the set. I got it sitting in my kitchen right now, and Mike's going to come over and we're going to test the heck out of this thing, and we're going to bring you some content based on it.
Sounds like some pretty sweet Christmas to me, man.
Sweet Christmas. You love to see it, man. That was pretty smooth.
Yeah, I'm getting better at these. I really am. All right. Well,
Mike, you just need to let your insanity guide you.
Yes, I'll go out in a blaze of glory, if you will. So with that, I think, as always, remember that Defender resolves first.
You'll love to see it.